Alright, you guys, I want to say thank you for allowing me to take the month off and being very understanding with everything that I had going on too. So, as voted in the subscriber choice for the month of February, this is the part that would have came out in the beginning of March. But I needed time to get it ready. So, without further ado, here's What If Indigo Champion Ash Challenged the Johto League, Part 7. We pick back up with Team Gary. They've been on the road for about a week and are exhausted. Gary has been going over and over the events of the last part. He doesn't know why, but the fact that Team Rocket has possession of the unknown tablet case is really unsettling. It's consumed his thoughts to the point that he's having trouble with his training. Ethan, on the other hand, is fully focused. He's been battling non-stop any trainer that moves. There is, however, one thing that has been met with resistance at every turn: his Weeping Bell. Its over-aggressive nature isn't something that he's had the ability to overcome. Even with the advice of Gary, which at this point is very lackluster due to his distractions, Ethan is still unable to bond with the Flytrap Pokemon. This leads us to the group setting up camp about a day's journey from Olivine City. The group sits around the fire reflecting on the crazy events that have taken place as of late. Ethan isn't too shaken up about it, as his best bud Typhlosion evolved to meet the challenge. Together, there's nothing they can't do. Marina, too, is thrilled with the recent events, as when their travels are over, she'll have a wealth of knowledge and experience to write up the ultimate research paper. But this conversation hits Gary in a certain way, when he remarks it must be nice to have all that youthful optimism, catching both of his traveling companions off guard. What do you mean, Marina asks? You guys don't know what's really going on. Come on, we're just trying to have a good time here, Ethan comments. I get that, Gary replies, but the fact that Team Rocket was involved in what happened last week is a huge cause for concern. You don't know them like I do. Okay, so they're bad guys. Big deal. We beat them then, and we can beat them now, Ethan replies. It's not that simple, Gary says. Once, I tried to battle their leader Giovanni. Really? How did that go? You must have won being the trainer that you are, Marina says. Not exactly, Gary replies. This was back when he ran the Verding City gym in Kanto, before anyone knew who he was. I had stopped there to challenge the gym, not because I needed the badge, but because I wanted to pump up my already overinflated ego. At first, I had control of the battle, taking out 2 of Giovanni's Pokemon, without even losing a single one. But then, it happened. The battle and the tone suddenly shifted when Giovanni offered me a challenge. I could use any Pokemon I want, as many as I want, to face as one Pokemon. That's nothing, Ethan says. You're Gary Oak, the best that Kanto has to offer. You would think that. I sure did, Gary says. But no, I used both Arcanine and Nidoking. But that Pokemon, it was too powerful. It was evil. That's impossible, Marina responds. Pokemon can't be evil. They only do the will of their trainers. You would think so, Gary says. But I was there. You didn't see what I saw. It was like it delighted in the pain it caused my 2 Pokemon. What kind of Pokemon was it, Ethan asks. I'm not sure. Even the Pokédex couldn't identify it, Gary remarks. But since that day, anything to do with Team Rocket, I've been on edge about. And now that they're in possession of a Pokemon that can literally warp reality, if that isn't a cause for concern, then I don't know what is, Gary says. I can see what you mean, but what can we do about it, Marina asks. Nothing, Ethan says. They already have the tablets, and we don't even know where they are. So the only thing we can do is move on, but we'll keep an eye out for them. Gary looks at Ethan. He smiles, thinking, man, you're really like Ash, but different in your own way. If you ever meet him, I hope you have a chance to battle. That would be a match worth watching, as the trio settles in for the night. Some hours later, after the fire has whittled out, some movement in the bushes can be heard next to the camp of our heroes. Ethan and Gary are the first to wake, very groggy to say the least. Ethan grabs one of his Pokeballs, thinking it's Typhlosion, and throws it so they will have some defense. But to his surprise, it wasn't the ball he thought it was, when he realizes Weeping Bell has popped out, and it's in no mood, having been awakened by its trainer mistakenly. The Flytrap doesn't even give Ethan a chance to recall it, as Weeping Bell fires a poison powder towards the unknown target. Then, it follows up with the Razor Leaf. As the 2 moves make contact, the group hears a yelp in pain, as something falls out of its hiding spot in the bushes. Gary pulls out his Pokédex, only for it to register the Pokemon as Houndour. Gary rushes to its side, realizing it's in very bad shape. Ethan begins to argue with Weeping Bell. How could you just attack without any commands, he yells. But it won't take this from this human, and replies with a Vine Whip that wraps Ethan up as Weeping Bell begins to slam him around on the ground. Marina, thinking quickly, recalls the infuriated Grass type, before Ethan is as in bad shape as Houndour is. Once that mess is over, they rush to Gary, with Ethan concerned about the damage that Weeping Bell caused. But Gary stops him. This wasn't caused by Weeping Bell. Sure, the poison powder and the Razor Leaf didn't help, but Houndour was already hurt before it got here. Something must have attacked it while it was here in the forest. Concerned, the group begins to search their supplies for anything that could heal up the doggo. Due to Ethan's consistent isn't battling, they're all out of healing supplies. Gary sees the severeness of these injuries and knows that if something's not done, then Houndour may not make it. Then, in one instant, Gary grabs his bag, sends out Arcanine, throwing Houndour on its back and mounting his loyal fire type, all in one motion, telling his friends to meet him at the Pokemon Center in Olivine City. He's going ahead to get treatment for Houndour. Before they can even comment, Gary is gone, leaving Ethan and Marina on their own for the first time since their adventure began. Now, just because Gary is gone doesn't mean that these two are in the clear. There's still the problem of what was hunting Houndour. Both Ethan and Marina pack up the camp, hoping to catch up with Gary as quickly as possible. As the two trainers set off from the trees above the camp, a shadowy figure is watching the two, giving chase as they start to move. Unfortunately, the group is making slow progress as they don't have the speed of Arcanine, and due to the lack of speed, they are met with the attacker of Houndour. It's a Pokemon that Ethan has never seen before, but Marina has. Only in textbooks though. The Pokédex reveals this Pokemon as Meditite, and it's overly aggressive, attacking both of our trainers. Marina deduces that it must be after Houndour, thinking they know where it is. Ethan decides to use Weepinbell against it, since at the suggestion of Gary, he was told that maybe it needed more time outside of his ball, as Ethan had been favoring Typhlosion more than any other Pokemon on his team as of late. Weepinbell does show some resistance to listening to Ethan at first, but when it's shown that Meditite has an unmatched battle prowess, it slowly starts to listen to Ethan, not because it wants to accept Ethan as a worthy trainer, but because it realizes that in the moment of the battle, that a second set of eyes in the battle helps. It doesn't listen for the calls of attacks, but it does listen when Ethan calls for dodges. Not much ground, but in Ethan's mind, it's something. This makes the battle somewhat even between the two dominant Mons. Unfortunately, Meditite holds a slight advantage as it has the Psychic typing as well. Weepinbell begins to lose the ground in the battle as Meditite is using trees to cover and remains in the shadows. Weepinbell, getting frustrated, fires random Razor Leafs, hitting both Marina and Ethan, but missing its primary target. Ethan, now angry with Weepinbell, yells at it, asking how could it do that, being so careless. This strikes the Mon, as it's never considered the safety of the others around it. But before it can respond, Ethan recalls it, as he doesn't have time to deal with Weepinbell right now, due to Meditite running amok. So Ethan sends in another one of his Pokemon, Sneasel, hoping the Dark typing will provide some protection against the Psychic type attacks. This actually works and forces Meditite into a hand-to-hand situation, where Sneasel shows that it is far better suited for, dodging blow after blow and landing high-impact moves like Feint Attack and Slash. This, however, is not enough, and Marina can see it. She tells Ethan that if he doesn't catch Meditite, then it will most likely keep attacking them all the way to Olivine City. Ethan commands Sneasel to increase its attacks and not let up. It needs to incapacitate Meditite. Sneasel rushes in with a Slash attack that was backed by a Quick Attack for added power. In turn, Meditite fires a Mach Punch that connects at the same time as the Slash, knocking both Mons out. Ethan then throws a ball that fails in capturing Meditite. The Mon then struggles to stand back up, looking into the eyes of this human that dare try to catch it. Meditite then makes a move for another attack, fainting in the process. Ethan figures, well, if it's going to resist a ball, then he'll just carry it. Marina tells him that he's crazy for doing that. What if it wakes up? We'll deal with that if and when it happens, Ethan says, as the two trainers run off towards Olivine City. Up ahead, Gary finally reaches the Pokemon Center. He rushes Houndour inside, having Nurse Joy immediately take it into the ER. Now, Gary has to wait, which is intense, as Houndour is very weak. It's going to be a while. So, Gary makes himself comfortable, eventually dozing off in the lobby of the center. After a few hours, Nurse Joy and Chansey come out and inform Gary he's reckless for allowing his Pokemon to develop these injuries. What kind of trainer is he, she asks, but Gary corrects her, saying it wandered into his campsite in the early hours of the day. Though the poison it's going through was caused by a Pokemon in his group, that was only because we thought we were being attacked. When I realized what was going on and how badly wounded it was, I rushed it here as fast as I could. Nurse Joy then apologizes for the confusion. She tells Gary that Houndour will need several days of care before it can be released back into the wild. As it seems Gary is not its trainer, then it appears that it doesn't have one. And without a trainer, they can't release it until it's fully healed. Gary tells her that's fine. He would rather it got the care it needed. So now, with that being settled, Gary has to wait for his friends to get here. With nothing left to do, Gary checks out the Olivine gym, only to find that it's locked. The gym attendant tells Gary that the leader is at the Olivine Lighthouse, taking care of a sick Pokemon. So Gary heads over to see if he can offer any assistance to the gym leader. But he's met with a call from Ethan and Marina as they enter the town. He can see that they're holding something. As they get closer, he sees it's a Pokemon. Gary rushes to them, asking what happened. His traveling companions tell him that they think this Pokemon Meditite was the one who attacked Houndour, as it attacked them with no probable cause. Why is it hurt? Gary asks. Well, I had to battle it, Ethan says. I tried to catch it as well, but it refused to stay in a ball, so I decided to carry it. Gutsy, Gary says. Well, let's get it to the Pokemon Center. So they rush off. Once entering the Pokemon Center, Nurse Joy eyes Gary. Why do you keep bringing me injured Pokemon? I'm starting to think you are actually the one hurting these Pokemon. Gary wanted to defend himself, is cut off by Ethan. Sorry, this is my fault. This Meditite attacked us, so I had no choice. We think it's what attacked the Houndour I brought in earlier, Gary tells her. Well, okay, Joy sighs. Let's get it into the ER. After a few hours, she comes out, telling the group that the wounds on Meditite aren't as bad as Houndour's. It should be up in a day or so. This brings a slight relief to the group. So, with these two Pokemon now taken care of, Gary and Ethan decide to head over to the lighthouse to find the gym leader. But when they get there, they are told that the leader headed out for the day. Gary asks when they will be back to take care of the sick Pokemon. The attendant responds, "Who? Jasmine? Well, Amphi was treated today, so she'll be back at the gym tomorrow for its grand reopening." Finally, Gary thinks, as the group head to the Pokemon Center, as it's now nightfall. But they will be there bright and early for one of the two gym battles they need to get done. The next morning, the group arrives at the gym. Gary and Ethan are arguing at the door on who will get to go first. Gary tells Ethan, "Listen, I got here first. I've been waiting longer, so it won't hurt to let me go first, as they both have to wait the same amount of time anyway." Ethan starts to make his point on why he should be the one to go first when they hear a loud crash coming from within the gym. The team rushes in, thinking that they are under attack, but what they see is something they weren't expecting. Two massive steel types battling it out. On one end, there is a girl who they assume is the leader, Jasmine. On the other end is a trainer that only Gary knows, Brock, the leader of the pewter gym. Once Jasmine realizes that they have visitors, they stop the battle. She approaches her guests, welcoming them to the gym, asking who is here for a gym battle. Ethan declares he's up first. Gary can wait. "Oh, so a duo of challengers, have we?" Then Brock immediately comes over, triggering a conversation between him and Gary. Gary inquires about Ash and Misty, as he's never seen Brock without them. Brock tells them that they went their separate ways, but on good terms. Then Jasmine approaches with Ethan and Marina in tow. "Brock, it seems we have a problem on our hands." "What's that?" he says. "It seems I have two challengers here for a battle, but I can only battle one at a time. So I was wondering if you could help me with it." "What do you mean? We each battle a different one?" Brock says. "No," Jasmine replies. "I was thinking a double battle. I hear they're all the rage in the Hoenn region." "A double battle, eh? Well, that sounds interesting. So like a tag team?" "Exactly like a tag team," she says. "I'm okay with it if they are." Gary and Ethan look at each other. They both smile at the chance to take advantage of this type of battle. The only catch is that they will have to wait until the morning, so Jasmine and Brock can rest their Pokemon. The two are informed that they will be allowed to use one Pokemon each. The battle is scheduled for noon. So, with that, the two trainers head back to the Pokemon Center to check on their two newest patients. Later on in the night, Gary is sitting by Houndour's bedside when Ethan approaches, asking what he's doing. "I'm just waiting," Gary replies. "The last thing it saw before it passed out, and I wanted to know that it's in a safe place." "That's smart," Ethan replies. "Yeah, I did that for my Pokemon when I first set out on my journey. As a matter of fact, when I caught Arcanine as a Growlithe, I had something similar happen. We had a battle where it was on a losing end. The only thing that I could do was just sit by its bedside till it recovered." "Then what happened?" Ethan asks. "Well, me and Growlithe came back stronger. We doubled our training, and soon after that it evolved. Ever since then, it's been one of my most reliable Pokemon." "But that's not what you're here for," says Gary. "The battle. I'm nervous. I've never done a double battle before. I don't want to be the reason you lose another gym battle," Ethan says. Gary looks at Ethan. "Remember what I told you at the start of the journey. There will always be trainers that are stronger than you. That's the part of being a Pokemon trainer. If we lose because they were better, that won't be a fail. But if we don't learn from that loss, then that is the failure. Don't worry. I'm sure we'll do fine. We know each other well enough and have battled enough to know each other's battle styles. I don't plan on holding back," Ethan says. "Neither should you." Ethan just looks at Gary as the night fades on. The next morning, Gary is awoken by a friendly bark. He looks up and Houndour is awake. It seems a little weak, but Nurse Joy did a fine job patching it up. Gary then spends the morning with the little pup. As he joins Ethan and Marina for breakfast, Nurse Joy informs the group that Houndour is actually on the younger side of its species, no more than a couple of months old. "Really? That would explain why it couldn't defend itself from the Meditite." "Yes, but there's still one mystery," Gary says. "Why did Meditite attack Houndour?" But that is something that they will have to wait to find out, as Ethan and Gary have to pick up their Pokemon from Chansey. But when they get there, they run into Brock, who is also picking up his Pokemon. When Marina notices that he is holding a very young-looking Pokemon in his hands, without hesitation, she rushes over to inspect this cute little tree-like Pokemon. She asks Brock what it is. Brock tells her it's a Pokemon called Bonsly, and he hatched it from his egg that he got from Professor Elm. "Professor Elm?" Marina questions. "Yes. As a matter of fact, after our battle today, I'm heading to his lab to intern with him." This angers Marina. How could this random guy get a chance to intern with Professor Elm while she was just ignored by him? That's it, she thinks. Now I'll do my best to show up this Brock as well. But Marina's inner monologue is interrupted by Brock asking if Ethan and Gary are ready for their battle. "We are," Ethan replies. "Good. Well, I'll see you at the gym then." And with that, Brock takes his leave. Gary and Ethan look at each other. They don't say anything, just giving each other a nod as they gather their Pokeballs, preparing to head to the gym. But when Gary tries to leave, Houndour won't let him. The Pokemon is up and walking around, but it's still weak and collapses after only a few steps. Gary does his best to comfort the hound dog, but it just cries when Gary tells it that he's gonna have to leave, and it won't stay put. Gary doesn't want to leave it, as if Houndour starts to search for him, it could stress its wounds and hurt itself even further. Gary talks with Nurse Joy about the situation. When she realizes Gary won't be able to leave without Houndour, she offers a compromise. Why don't Gary take it with him, but only allow it to watch, no actual battling? Gary is opposed to this at first, but after some talking with Ethan and Marina, who swears she will watch over it while the two battle, Gary concedes to take it with him, but he won't allow it to walk, so he sends out Arcanine and asks it if he wouldn't mind allowing Houndour to ride on its back. Arcanine, who is one of Gary's most loyal Pokemon, has no problem with this, so the group sets off for the gym. Once Team Gary arrives, Jasmine and Brock are waiting outside. Jasmine was afraid that they wouldn't show, as it's about an hour past noon. Gary apologizes, explaining what happened with Houndour. Brock does think it's excessive that they brought Houndour to the battle, but he can understand the thought of preventing further injury to it, though he insists that it remains on the sidelines, which Gary agrees. But this in itself proves to be a problem, as it won't stay unless Gary or Arcanine is there, and Gary was planning to use Arcanine in this battle, but decides to use another one of his Pokemon to keep Houndour on the sidelines. Now that they've figured out the details of this already draining day, Gary and Ethan are ready for the battle, but there is something Ethan is still struggling with, and it's the choice for today's battle. He wanted to follow Gary's advice and use other Pokemon so they can get stronger, but at the same time, Typhlosion is his strongest Pokemon, with the best advantage against a Steel-type gym. Ethan looks to Gary for advice, but Gary has his focus set on something else, so Ethan has to make the choice for himself. Both Brock and Jasmine have waited long enough, and they send in their Pokemon, which to no one's surprise is their duo of Steelix. Both Gary and Ethan look on. With no hesitation on Gary's side, he sends in his strongest Pokemon, Blastoise. Ethan wonders why he would use Blastoise, going against his own advice, but his thoughts are interrupted by Jasmine, asking if Ethan is going to battle or leave the match to just Gary, snapping Ethan out of his thoughts. Ethan makes his choice following Gary's lead, using his starter, Typhlosion. Finally, Jasmine says, "I thought this battle would never start." As Gary and Ethan are the challengers, Jasmine and Brock both give them the first move. Gary looks to Ethan, almost to say, "Don't worry, we can do this," as he calls for a Hydro Pump. Ethan then follows suit with the Flamethrower. These two moves are solid. They should be a one-shot, as they both aimed for Brock's Steelix, but Jasmine orders her Steelix to intercept, as the Iron Snake puts up a defense neither of them have seen before. Sandstorm. Interesting, Gary comments. "You like that?" Jasmine says. "This is my way of minimizing damage from high-impact moves like the ones you two just used." But this was only half of their strategy, as Brock retaliates with the Dragon Breath. It catches Typhlosion, as Ethan was distracted by the Sandstorm. Typhlosion cries as the attack envelops it. Not only has it taken damage, but now it's paralyzed. "Perfect," Brock says. "Wait, what?" Ethan responds. "You didn't even notice?" Brock questions. "We wanted to draw your attacks and attention with the Sandstorm defense, so you could land the Dragon Breath," Ethan replies. "Yep, we wanted to slow down the faster of your Pokemon. Luckily, my Steelix was able to get the paralysis," Brock says. Ethan now has a look of panic on his face as he turns to Gary, who's just looking on. He doesn't seem stressed at all, and Ethan wonders why. These two just dealt with their first assault no problem at all, but Gary is unfazed. Why, Ethan thinks. Then, Gary just smiles. "That was great," he said. "I thought you two would be a challenge. I'm really looking forward to this battle." Wait, how could he be so calm? I'm a liability in the battle now, and after his last gym loss, he's not worried at all? Gary then turns to Ethan. "Hey, stop overthinking this," Gary says. "We're not done yet. That was only the first exchange. We can still do this, but we have to work together. But if I lose, then I would be the reason why you didn't get this badge," Ethan replies. "So," Gary says, "we can always re-challenge the gym, but stop thinking about something that we don't know would happen. Let's focus on here, as we're not beaten. The battle has just begun." This pep talk is what Ethan needed. He smiles. "You're right," Ethan says. "We can do this." Ethan calls for Typhlosion. It feels the paralysis, but it cries out, still ready for a battle. "Good," Ethan says. He then looks at Gary, telling him, "Let's return the favor." Gary smiles. "Yes, let's." As Ethan calls for a Flame Wheel on Jasmine's Steelix. She tries to put up the Sandstorm defense, but Gary calls for another Hydro Pump, surprisingly aimed at Typhlosion. The Water Blast hits the Fire Badger, increasing its speed of Typhlosion's attack, allowing it to connect with Jasmine's Steelix, while creating a steam cloud in the process, enveloping the battlefield. Brock uses this to his advantage though, ordering a dig from his Iron Snake, while Jasmine's recovers from its shield being rendered useless. Though they got through, Team Gary's move did have a negative side effect, with Typhlosion taking damage from the Hydro Pump. It's breathing heavily, with the paralysis not making it any easier. Ethan can see it as well as Gary. They needed to make a power push, but as they contemplate their next move, Brock Steelix is surfaced with a crunch on Blastoise, causing the turtle to withdraw to avoid any damage. Jasmine capitalized on this with an Iron Tail aimed for Typhlosion. Ethan looks on, ordering a dodge, but Typhlosion can't move, with the tail landing directly on top of it, stunning both Ethan and Gary. Once Jasmine's Mon moves, Ethan looks for Typhlosion, but it's not there. Confused, Ethan calls for his partner, when it surfaces, attacking Jasmine's Mon with the flamethrower at point blank, enveloping her ace in flames. What? Ethan gasps. It learned Dig to avoid the Iron Tail, Gary remarks. Dig? That's a new one, Ethan responds. Brock then orders Steelix to break the crunch on Blastoise and hit an Iron Tail on Typhlosion, while Gary orders a Hydro Pump on Jasmine's Steelix. Ethan orders another Dig in an attempt to avoid the second Iron Tail, but the paralysis strikes and Typhlosion is caught, ending the Mon in this battle, while Jasmine is slow to the command and is overwhelmed with the Hydro Pump, knocking out her Steelix, shocking all the trainers in the battle. Ethan and Jasmine recall their respective Pokemon, leaving a rematch between Gary and Brock. These two flash back to the first battle they ever had, with their Onix and Squirtle. Just like old times, eh, Gary? Yep, but the result will still be the same, he replies, as the two start the final leg of their battle. At this point, it comes down to who has the better defense. While Steelix is a defensive monster, Blastoise has one thing going for it: its shell, mitigating the damage it takes, allowing it to endure an onslaught of Iron Tails from Steelix. Jasmine looks on. She trusted the reputation of her gym to Brock, while Ethan watches as his next badge rides on Gary's victory. The battle comes to a climax when Brock calls for one last crunch, but Gary orders a rapid spin to dodge, angling out of range of the crunch, firing a Hydro Pump in response, pushing Steelix into the wall, ending the battle. Ethan jumps, rushing over to Gary's side. They are also joined by Marina, Arcanine, and Houndour. The pup jumps into Gary's arms, licking his face super affectionately. Gary laughs as Ethan tells him that was amazing. He had a blast battling with him as a tag team, and Typhlosion learned a new move during the battle too. That was the cherry on top. Jasmine and Brock approach the duo, presenting the mineral badge to each one of them. Jasmine then turns to Brock, telling him for his last battle as a gym leader, he did her gym proud. Brock says it was an honor to tag with her. He wouldn't have had it any other way. With that, Brock and Team Gary part ways from the gym. Brock aims to get on the road today after Nurse Joy checks out his Pokemon, while Team Gary has to wait till the morning for the ferry to Cianwood City. The next morning, Team Gary readies to depart the Pokemon Center, but when Gary tries to leave, he's stopped by another whimper. He turns to see Houndour. It doesn't want Gary to go. Gary says it must stay here. It still needs time to recover, but Houndour isn't having it. It won't let Gary leave without it. Nurse Joy chimes in, telling Gary that Houndour can actually leave now, but only if it's with somebody that can take care of it, as it doesn't have the strength to survive on its own. Gary looks at Houndour. So, would you like to come with me? The pup barks out of joy, nuzzling Gary's leg. Well, I guess I don't have a choice. Welcome to the team. Gary pulls out a Pokeball to capture Houndour, but once it sees the ball, its demeanor changes to fear. So, you don't like balls. Okay, we don't have to use one right now. You can just walk with us. Houndour changes back to its happy self, with Team Gary setting off for the harbor. But when they get there, Team Gary is met with another problem. The ferry that takes people directly to Cianwood City was lost at sea due to a storm a few days back. Great. Now what will we do, Marina sighs. The harbor master then says that there is a smaller ferry that runs to the Whirl Islands. If you dock there, then you can eventually make your way to Cianwood City by island hopping. Gary looks at his team. Well, what do you think? I don't see any other way, Ethan says. I guess the Whirl Islands are the next stop on our destination, as Team Gary sets off. But little do they know, they won't be taking this trip alone, as a mysterious figure is looking on. Now, let's slide over to Team Ash. As Ash and Misty board their boat bound for the Whirl Islands, a voice rings out throughout the crowd. A boy in green named Vincent finally reaches the group, breathing heavily. Confused, Ash asks if he knows this boy. No, Vincent says, but I know you, Ash Ketchum, 11 years old, the youngest champion in the history of Kanto. Wow, is this your Pikachu? As Vincent grabs Pikachu, holding its cheeks. Wait, don't! But Ash is too late, as Vincent catches a thunderbolt from the electric mouse. After he brushes off the static and apologizes for what he did, Vincent formally introduces himself and says that he is challenging the Johto League. Oh, really? Really? I am too, Ash says. I figured as much, Vincent said. I saw your battle at the fighting presentation yesterday. When I saw you battle your way to the finals with your primate, I knew that I had to meet you before you left. Can I have your autograph, Vincent asks, catching Ash off guard. Sure, I guess, Ash says. This actually being the first time anyone has ever asked for something like that. Vincent then asks how many gym badges he has, trying to gauge himself to his hero. Ash replies 4. Vincent, shocked, flashes his badge case that contains 6 of the Johto gym badges. I thought with you being a champion, you would have more, Vince says. Well, I've been sidetracked a few times while out here in Johto, but no worry, I'll make up the time. I always do. Vincent then asks the question that's been on his mind since he started his Pokemon journey. Ash, can we have a battle? Sure, but it's gonna have to wait. What? Why? Vincent cries. Ash points behind him, a line with some very upset passengers looking sternly at Vincent for holding it up. Oh, right. Gotta get on the ship. But wait, I don't have a ticket, Vincent screams. Hold on, I'll be right back, as he runs down the ramp to the ticket booth. Ash and Misty continue to board, pondering the odd curiosity of the boy that they just ran into. Some time passes and the ferry finally sets sail for the first island in the World Adventures, Blue Point Isle, the biggest of the islands. Then they hear it, Vincent running towards them. Phew! That was close. I almost didn't make it, Vincent says. So Ash, what do you think? Can we have our battle now? Yeah, I don't mind having a battle with you, but it'll have to wait until we dock on Blue Point Isle. Excited, Vincent can barely contain himself. He then asks another question. So, if you're challenging the gyms, why are you going to the WHIRL Islands? Then, Misty chimes in. I am, Misty says. Oh, your name is, what was your name again? Angered by this comment, she yells, Misty! My name is Misty, the leader of the Cerulean City Gym in Kanto. Oh, right. Aren't you Ash's girlfriend? Vincent questions, further angering Misty. No, you nitwit. We're just friends. And the reason we're going to the WHIRL Islands is because there's a water Pokemon tournament there called the WHIRL Cup. And I, as a water Pokemon specialist, aim to win the tournament. A tournament? That sounds fun. I guess I'll join you, Vincent says. Rude of you just to invite yourself, Misty replies. Already tired of this kid. Come on, Misty. If he wanted to join, then let him. It's not like we could stop him anyway, as it's a public event. Besides, if you want to be the best water type specialist, then you need all the healthy competition you can get. Yeah, I guess you're right, she reluctantly agrees. Vincent thanks Ash, telling him that he's every bit of the hero that he imagined him to be. What? I'm no hero, just a trainer who loves Pokemon. That's it. Well, you're still my hero, Vincent says. Ash eyes the overzealous fanboy. It's odd to him. He's never had someone like this around. The boat ride to Blue Point Isle is a short one, only about an hour's ride from Cianwood City. Ash is very clear with Vincent. First, he and Misty intend to register for the World Cup before they can have their battle. Luckily, the registration is at the Pokemon Center in the port town that they are going to, so there we can have our battle on the field behind it. With all these plans made, everything's looking up, although an unfortunate turn of events happens during this ride. They are met with rough seas as the tiny ferry is thrashed about. In the panic, Misty is trying to range Togepi and her egg. Unfortunately, she ends up dropping the egg when the boat is broadsided by a giant wave. Misty hands Togepi to Ash as she takes off after the egg. Brock would kill her if anything happened to this. Things speed up when the egg nears the edge of the boat. It teeters on the side. Misty jumps for it as it falls into the sea. Now Misty has a problem. All of her Pokeballs are back on the boat in her bag that she left with Ash. She thinks this is it. She's done for when she's swept under with the egg. Misty opens her eyes in an attempt to get a bearing, trying not to lose sight of the boat. But what she sees is a sight of pure terror. A dark figure in the water lets out an ear-piercing cry. Then, a whirlpool cyclones around it, pulling Misty in. Is this it? Am I actually done for, she thinks? Just as Misty can no longer hold her breath, she feels something grab her. It's Octillery and Staryu. They've come to her rescue. The two use all of their might to break free of the current, eventually making it back to the boat as the storm seems to have calmed. Misty, gasping for air? Did you see that? See what? Ash and Vincent question. The figure in the water. It was huge and angry. I didn't see anything, Ash replies. Misty just stares out into the open sea. What was that, she thinks to herself. But her thoughts are cut short when the egg she's been holding onto with the grip of life starts to glow. It's hatching, Vincent replies. When the light subsides, a new baby Pokemon rests in Misty's arms, something she's never seen before. Ash pulls out his Pokedex and it identifies this Pokemon as Chinchou, a water electric type, Ash says. Really, Misty says? The newly hatched Pokemon begins to look around, with the first thing it sees being Misty. It gets scared at first, but Togepi comes over, as it is still technically a baby. The two seem to hit it off, as Misty now has to decide what to do. She hadn't thought about the fact that with Togepi and this new young one, it's going to be a handful. But on the other hand, a water electric type will add a lot of diversity to her team, and since she wants to be a water Pokemon master, she decides to knuckle down and accept the responsibility. Just as the sun starts to hit the water, the captain of their vessel announces over the speaker that they have made it to Blue Point Isle. They will be docking shortly. Once on the island, Ash and his friends head to the Pokemon Center. Once there, all three of them begin the process of entering the World Cup. But there's a problem. Vincent only has one water Pokemon, his Azumarill, and you need a minimum of 2 to register. In a panic, Vincent says he'll be back back, running out of the Pokemon Center, with Ash and Misty looking on in confusion. With Vincent gone, Ash and Misty decide to check out the town, as they are registered for the World Cup. After seeing some sights and eating more than their weight in food, Ash and Misty find themselves on the beach, where they run back into Vincent, who's battling a Golduck. Just as they reach him, his Meganium lands a body slam, allowing Vincent to capture. He said, "Alright, that makes 3, he says. The duo join him, asking him what he's doing. Vincent says he needed more water Pokemon. I figure since we're on an island, there should be a lot of them around here. Like that one, pointing to one making its way across the beach toward the water. Misty screams in delight, hurting the ears of everyone around her. No way, it's a Corsola. I've always wanted one of those since I was a little girl. Hey, I saw it first, Vincent replies. So, it's whoever can catch it, Misty says. What follows is a very comical string of events with Misty, Poliwhirl, Vincent, and Meganium, them all struggling to capture Corsola, with it completely oblivious to the whole altercation that's happening. It gets to the point that both Misty and Vincent throw a ball in an attempt to catch the wandering coral. The balls collide in midair, stopping each other in the process. Corsola just scampers on into the water, disappearing from sight. Now Vincent and Misty are fighting on the beach, blaming each other for the loss of the rare catch. They just argue on and on and on, causing both Chinchou and Togepi to cry. They've never seen Misty like this. Ash then intervenes, telling them to stop. It's dumb to argue. Besides, Vincent, don't you still need to register for the World Cup? Realizing Ash is right, Vincent then takes off toward the center, leaving Misty and Ash on the beach. Just as the duo recover from the craziness, Corsola saunters back on the beach, still oblivious to its surroundings. Misty's blood flares as she tells Poliwhirl to attack it. This gets a reaction from the Coromon that Misty wasn't expecting. It begins to fight back with moves like Spike Cannon and Water Gun, pushing back her Poliwhirl. It starts to feel the pain as it's tired from battling with Vincent's Meganium. It staggers to its feet. Misty knows Poliwhirl can't last much longer, so she starts to recall it, but it refuses to return. It wants this battle. It needs this battle. So Misty, understanding that its need to prove itself, allows it to stay in, ordering it to rush in with the final push, using a double slap to break the spike cannons being fired. Poliwhirl is able to get in close to land a body slam. This gives Misty the opening she needed, and she readies the lure ball she got from Kurt. With 3 long drawn out shakes, Misty is successful in adding Corsola to her team. Ash joins Misty by her side. Congratulations, Misty. Listen, I know you've been down lately. I don't know why, but I can tell that this catch was something that you needed. This surprises Misty, as she didn't think that Ash was that observant. She starts to say something, but decides to stay quiet, as she doesn't want to ruin the moment. With that, they head back to the Pokemon Center, where they find Vincent waiting. He's upset. It's now nightfall. He and Ash were supposed to have their battle, but they can't due to the time. Misty reminds Vincent that he was the one who ran off to catch Pokemon. That's not Ash's fault. This angers Vincent a little, but he knows that she's right. But then Ash chimes in, saying that they could have their battle first thing in the morning. This does ease the tension in the group, with Vincent saying that this will be a fair compensation that he could agree with. Misty, mad at his attitude, decides to rub her newest catch in Vincent's face, but is stopped when Chinchou starts to cry due to hunger. With that, the group settles in for the night after a very stressful day. The next morning, Vincent is up before Ash. He's itching for the battle Ash promised him. Once Ash makes his way to the lobby of the Pokemon Center, Vincent doesn't even give him a second to react, demanding that they have their battle. But I haven't even had a chance to eat, Ash says. That's not important. Our battle. It's happening now. Okay, we'll battle, Ash says. We'll make it a 2-on-2. Vince doesn't care about the amount of the battle, he just wants to finally have it. The two head outside and start the battle. While this is happening, Misty is busy inside of the Pokemon Center now that she has 2 babies to attend to, and it's like being a full-time single mom. She's stressed, but she's slowly getting things under control. While Misty is eating, tending to Togepi and Chinchou, she begins to look around the Pokemon Center. At first glance, nothing seems out of the ordinary, but on a double take, she notices something, or someone, quite concerning. Misty drops what she's doing, interrupting her meal, rushing out to where Ash is. Out on the battlefield, the battle is in full swing. Ash and Vincent are on their first Pokemon, Pikachu versus Furret. Things seem to be going in Ash's favor when the battle is interrupted in a panic from Misty. Ash! We have a problem. Misty, are you okay? Out of breath? Ash! In the Pokemon Center. Domino. Domino, Ash questions? Yes, Domino. As in Domino of Team Rocket? I saw her meeting with 2 other people. Ash's demeanor now changes to a serious one, telling Vincent that they need to stop the battle. There is something far more important as he rushes into the center. He and Misty enter with godlike speed, with Vincent in tow demanding that Ash stop, wondering why he ended their battle. Ash looks around, frantically searching for Domino. I don't see anything, Misty. Are you sure that's who you saw? Yes, I'm sure, Ash. You don't forget someone like that, especially when they were involved in the same events that you were, referring to Mount Cana. Ash grits his teeth. If it was Domino, why is she here? And who was she meeting with? All questions Ash will have to wait to have answered. Outside of the Pokemon Center, now moving away from a compromised location, Domino wonders how the champion Ash knows who she is. This is a cause for concern. If he is aware of the activities of Team Rocket and Johto, then things could become far more complicated than they need to be, as she phones her boss for her next set of orders. Back in the Pokemon Center, Ash is growing concerned. Domino seems to have resurfaced here in the WHIRL Islands, and it's been quite some time since their last altercation. He doesn't know what she's up to, but he knows that whatever she's in, it can't be good. Misty tells Ash she knows that she was here. She was also with 2 other people that she hadn't seen before. Maybe other members of Team Rocket, Misty says. Ash says, it's very possible, but whatever it is, we need to find out. Because whatever they're up to, you can bet that it has something to do with Giovanni, and he has to be stopped. Misty agrees. Vincent, clueless to everything that's going on, tries to get some information out of Ash. But Ash is kind of hesitant to let Vincent in on what's going on. He's only known him for about a day or so. Doesn't really know if he can trust him. They're not super close, and they haven't had very many experiences together. Vincent is kind of thrown off by this, as he assumed that Ash would just be forthcoming with any problems that he has. After all, Vincent's been nothing but nice to him. He doesn't understand the severity of the situation, and because he doesn't, he kind of takes it personal. Just saying, you know what, forget the battle, and they walk off. Ash and Misty don't really know what else to do. Domino's no longer here, so they make the choice to settle in for the night, as they have to get an early start in the next morning. Bright and early the next morning, Ash and Misty are up, but Vincent's nowhere to be seen. They figure maybe he just moved on, which Ash and Misty have to as well. They have to make their way across Blue Point Isle to the port city of Blue Finland, so it's about a day's trek from where their current location is, so they decide to get on the road as quickly as possible. With Ash and Misty on the road, Ash starts to talk with Misty. He's been thinking about how he needs to level up his Pokemon. He's been thinking that maybe he should start working with some individual moves with them, starting with Pikachu. Misty says, really? What'd you have in mind? He said, well, ever since my battle at the Olivine Gym, I've had a thought. That move, Iron Tail, that Jasmine Steelix knew, Brock Steelix also knows it as well. I was wondering if maybe I could teach that to Pikachu. It does lack some physical offensive moves, and that type of move would be just the power it needs to be able to stand up for itself in a tight situation. Misty does concur with this, but she doesn't quite understand the move herself, and because they don't have a starting point, they really wouldn't know how to train in the move. Just then, they hear a voice off in the distance screaming Ash and Misty's name. They turn around and it's Vincent running up to them, screaming, hey, stop, wait for me. So they do so. Vincent finally makes his way back to them. You guys, why'd you leave without me? Misty and Ash just shrug. We thought you had moved on. We didn't see you anywhere in the Pokemon Center. Vincent says he had gotten up early to try and see if he can find some more water Pokemon. Unfortunately, he was out of luck. So when he returned to the center, Misty and Ash were already gone. Nurse Joy told him that they had made their way to the north side of the island in preparation of leaving for the next island. So Vincent took off as fast as he could. Ash tells him, well, I'm sorry. I didn't really mean to leave you behind, but we didn't really know what else to do as you didn't tell us where you were going. And besides, it's not like we were traveling together or anything. Vincent kind of gets upset at this statement. In his mind, he was part of the group. But hearing us say that, it puts him down a little bit. And Ash can see it. It's nothing personal. It's just we barely know each other. Vincent says, yeah, I guess you're right. Well, if you don't want to travel with me, I can make my own way. Ash says, no, don't worry about it. You're already here, so we're going the same direction. Why don't we just travel together? As long as Misty's okay with it anyway. Misty looks at Vincent and gives him an eye, but nods her head in approval. So with that, the group takes off. Vincent asks Ash and Misty what they were talking about. And Ash says, well, he's been considering teaching his Pokemon some new moves, starting with Pikachu. He's interested in teaching it the move Iron Tail. Really, Vincent says? Well, I may have a solution for you. And he sends back out his Furret. Ash says, what do you mean? Vincent tells Ash that he actually went through the paces of teaching his Furret the move Iron Tail. So if he would like, his Furret and him could mentor Ash and Pikachu in the move. Ash is surprised. This kid actually seems like he might be a little bit more capable than he was letting on. So Ash agrees. It's about a 2-day trek from the port on the south side of the island to Blue Finland on the north side of the island. So Ash and Pikachu spend their time working with Vincent and Furret. Pikachu is making relatively quick progress with its new move, but it still has a long way to go. He can execute the move and has the basic fundamentals down, but it's still lacking in the raw power. Vincent suggests that Ash practice on rocks and huge boulders whenever they come across them. That's how him and Furret got good with the move. So Ash and Pikachu take this to heart, practicing repeatedly. It's like building muscle memory. They have to use the move repeatedly in order to build up the power of Pikachu's tail. During this trek, they come across a small town called Blue Lagoon. This town is very special on the Isle of Blue, and the reason for it is because once a year, they have a march of a very special Pokemon that leave the lagoon to enter the sea so they can start their lives, and it just so happens to be Chinchou, Misty's newest Pokemon. And once this Pokemon sees a bunch of other of its own species, it gets excited and wants to partake in the festivities. So Misty decides to join the parade to help with Chinchou, and it manages to make some new friends along the way. Vincent actually decides to go with Misty on this one, as he has a chance to catch new water Pokemon on the north side of the island. So that's what he's going to be looking to do. Ash, on the other hand, decides to stick around the Blue Lagoon because it has a bunch of the large boulders that Vincent was talking about, and he thinks this will be perfect for training Pikachu and Iron Tail. So they get started. He tells Vincent and Misty that I'll meet up with them at the end of the day, as they had found out from the mayor of Blue Lagoon that the next ferry doesn't leave until tomorrow morning. So he's got some time and he wants to use it wisely. So with that, they part ways. Misty and Vincent actually make it to the sea with no relative problems. The two spend some time getting to know each other, and Misty secretly starts to realize that Vincent isn't that bad. He does have a bit of abrasive personality, but it grows on you after a while Vincent starts to realize the actual capability of Misty as a trainer. She really is a gym leader, and her strength shows it. She's somewhat equal to Ash in that aspect, and he's come to respect her, even though neither one of them would tell each other their own views on each other. But Ash, on the other hand, during his training, he's having quite the issue. He just can't seem to get Pikachu to hold the Iron Tail for more than 2 uses. After its second use, Pikachu needs to take a break to regain its energy, and it's starting to frustrate the young champion. Him and Pikachu not wanting to give in, they keep pushing, and eventually they get to the point to where they might be able to use a third one in a row. With the final strike, Ash orders Pikachu to use its third Iron Tail in a row on a huge boulder that Ash has had his eye on since they got there. He's been wanting to try and crack it, but none of the Iron Tails have been successful. This one, however, does manage to break the boulder in half, and Ash and Pikachu celebrate with this slight victory, as it's taken them quite a while to get to this point. But then, something happens. Out from the crack of the boulder, something starts to move, and then a thick, gooey, purple liquid shoots towards Pikachu. Ash calls for Pikachu to dodge, and it successfully does, with the goo landing on the ground. Ash looks at it, realizing what it is. Toxic. Ash looks back, and a small Pokemon manages to squeeze itself out of the crack of the boulder that they had just broke. Ash pulls out his Pokedex, and this Pokedex reveals that this Pokemon is known as Shuckle, a rock bug type, and it is not happy that Ash just disturbed its sleep. This Pokemon is extremely slow, having trouble getting around, but it keeps firing Toxics at Pikachu. Ash uses this as an opportunity to try out their new move, and he calls for an Iron Tail. Pikachu makes the attempt to execute the move, but when the tail lands on Shuckle, nothing happens. The move failed right before it made contact, and unfortunately for Pikachu, this opens it up to have a Toxic landed at point blank, poisoning the electric mouse. Ash, realizing his mistake, screams for Pikachu, and Pikachu immediately jumps away, but it is starting to feel the effects of the poison, and because Pikachu was so close, it got a heavy dose of it. Shuckle just looks on. It's still angry for being disturbed, and it's not giving in. Eventually, it starts to glow, and Ash recognizes this move as Defense Curl, and then something happens that Ash wasn't expecting. It executes a secondary move, known as Rollout, and unfortunately, the power of the Rollout is increased because it used Defense Curl, and it's aiming straight for Pikachu. Ash orders Pikachu to dodge repeatedly. Unfortunately, Pikachu won't be able to keep this up for much longer. The poison is starting to take effect, and it's getting worse and worse with each move that the electric mouse makes. Ash realizes that he's going to have to do something. This Shuckle is upset with him, and Ash can understand why. Effectively, they broke its house. So, he makes a decision. The only way that he's going to be able to get out of this is if he catches the thing. He orders Pikachu to fire a Thunder at Shuckle, Pikachu's strongest move, hoping that it'll be enough to immobilize it. Luckily for Ash, it does. Shuckle ends up losing control of its rollout, rolling right back into the rock that it came out of, smacking head first, knocking itself out. Ash thinks, great, another Pokemon that needs help. He walks over to try and pick it up to take it over to Bluefoundland to try and get it looked at by Nurse Joy, but it's too heavy. He can't carry it. So he does the only thing he can. He throws a Pokeball at it, catching it. Then his Pokedex activates, asking him to send one of the Pokemon that he has with him to Professor Oak, as he can only carry 6 total. Ash thinks to himself, the only Pokemon that doesn't really need right now is Ursaring, and he needs to get this thing to a Pokemon Center. So with that, he chooses Ursaring to be sent to Professor Oak, so that way he can keep Shuckle with him. He then grabs Pikachu and heads running out of the Blue Lagoon down to Bluefoundland. Once he arrives, he rushes into the Pokemon Center. Pikachu is in bad shape. It's had the poison now for about an hour, and it's unconscious. So Ash takes it to Nurse Joy, pleading with her to help it. He also hands over Shuckle's ball as well, as he doesn't know what kind of shape it's in. Ash then meets up with Vincent and Misty, explaining to them what happened. Both surprised, they ask if Ash is okay. He says yeah, but now he's just waiting for Nurse Joy to come out, which fortunately, right after this conversation takes place, she does arrive. She lets Ash know what's going on, telling him that Pikachu will be just fine, it just needs a night's rest. The antidote is doing its job. Shuckle, on the other hand, you don't have to worry about it. Even though it knocked itself out, it seems to be just fine. She then hands over Shuckle's ball to Ash, and he lets it out of the Pokeball. Shuckle looks up, wondering where it's at, as it's never seen anything like this before. Ash kneels down to it, explaining to it what happened. He knows that it hurt itself, and he was concerned about it, so he caught it, and he brought it to the Pokemon Center. He tells it that it was sorry. He didn't intend to actually capture it, but he couldn't lift it by itself, so he had to get it here somehow. Shuckle just looks at this odd boy, thinking about what's going on. Shuckle's head starts to move. Ash, worried that this thing is going to fire another Toxic again, starts to step back, but then something amazing happens. Shuckle just begins to cry for joy. It's never had someone like that to care for it before, and it is eternally grateful. All it's doing is showing affection towards Ash. Ash is kind of caught off guard by this. He's never had a Pokemon that's this emotional. He then manages to calm Shuckle down by asking if it's okay. Shuckle nods in approval. Ash then tells Shuckle, listen, I didn't really want to capture you, so if you would like, you're more than welcome to go. I don't want to keep you. Shuckle looks at Ash and then looks at the door. It looks back at Ash and it shakes its head. It doesn't want to leave. Ash says, so, you want to come with me then? Shuckle again starts crying out of pure happiness. It has somebody that wants to care for it. And that's all it ever wanted. It spent all that time lonely in the mountain by Blue Lagoon. Now it has a family, the family that it's always wanted. So with that, Ash taps the ball back on its head and welcomes Shuckle to the team. The next morning, the group catches a ferry from the port heading towards Yellow Rock Isle. This trip shouldn't take that long, only a couple of hours at least. The island's not that far. Fortunately, during the trip, another storm kicks up with whirlpools and clouds circling with massive rains. One of the whirlpools ends up catching our heroes, sinking the ship in the process and separating every one of them. After a while, Ash, Misty, and Vincent ended up waking up on the beach of an island, trying to figure out where they are and what happened. They all remember the shipwreck, but they don't remember how they got to this isle. They were nowhere close to it. But then, Ash hears a call from the water just offshore, a call that's familiar to him. He looks out to see a school of Pokemon that he's seen before. One of those Pokemon approaches him, calling to him. Ash thinks, I know this Pokemon. Lapras? It cries with joy, as it's been quite some time since it's seen its trainer. Ash and Lapras are so excited to see each other. Ash then manages to figure out that it was Lapras and its herd that found Ash, and they managed to bring it to the shores of this isle. Ash, Misty, and Vincent all thank Lapras for its intervention. He never thought he would see his old friend again, and boy has it grown. It's almost the size of all the other Lapras in the group. He tells it that he's proud of it. It looks like it's become strong. Lapras nods as it and Ash converse. Vincent then asks Misty how Ash knows this Lapras. Then Misty goes on to explain to Vincent about their travels in the Whirl Islands and how Ash ended up saving Lapras from a bunch of people that were bullying it, and he helped reunite it with its lost herd. I never thought we would see it again, but I guess they must migrate through the Whirl Islands. Ash then comes over and he has some great news. Ash tells Vincent and Misty that he's talked with Lapras, and it and its herd have agreed to ferry them to the isle that they need, which just so happens to be the site of the World Cup, Red Rock Isle. Misty's excited about this, as it brings back nostalgic memories of her getting to ride along with Ash on the Lapras. Vincent, on the other hand, is a little apprehensive. He's not too sure about riding on a Pokemon on open water. Ash just looks at him and he says, listen, it'll be fine. I'll trust Lapras with my life. It's gotten me out of several situations, and it's a strong battler. Lapras cries, backing up what Ash is saying. Vincent, still a little hesitant, but now intimidated that it might be attacked by Lapras, decides to go along with it. And with that, our group now sets out with the herd of Lapras heading to Red Rock Isle. It takes a few days. The group ends up encountering some more heavy storms with whirlpools that seem to appear out of nowhere, forcing them to hopscotch from island to island with the Lapras in tow. But they eventually make it to Red Rock Isle. All the while, Misty seems to be questioning why these storms are happening. They don't seem to be random. It seems like something's trying to reach out to them, but she can't worry about that now because they've finally made it to Red Rock Isle, and this is the site of the World Cup. Ash has been talking about the World Cup with Misty the whole time, while Lapras and her herd have been listening. Ash then goes to say goodbye to his old friend, telling Lapras that he appreciates it for bringing him this far. He really does miss spending time with it, but he understands that it has to go. But Lapras makes a cry, followed by the rest of its herd. They actually don't have to leave. What Ash doesn't understand is, during this time of the year in the Whirl Islands, the Lapras are celebrated at the World Cup. So the Lapras are going to be sticking around. And this is backed up by a bunch of the bystanders on the beach that they land on when they start saying, look, the Lapras, they're all returned. It's officially time to start the Whirl festivities. Ash looks on, as does Misty and Vincent. Ash then turns to Lapras. Is this true? Do you guys end up here each year? Lapras nods. Ash then has a brilliant idea. Lapras, how would you like to battle with me in the World Cup? Lapras looks to its trainer deep in its eyes, and with a nod of its head, it's going to be participating in the World Cup as part of Ash's team. Alright, you guys, and that's all I have for part 7 of What If Indigo Champion Ash challenged the Johto League. How do you guys feel about this part? How did you feel about the double battle with Gary and Ethan versus Brock and Jasmine? And how did you feel about Gary's newest semi-addition to his team in Houndour? And then, of course, how do you feel about Ash's half? The fact that Domino and what appears to be 2 other members of Team Rocket have made their faces known. Also, how do you feel about Vincent semi-joining the team at this current point? And Ash's newest capture in Shuckle. And let's not forget, Ash now has an ace in the hole while going into the World Cup. Let me know what you guys think down below. If you enjoyed the video, please drop a like for the YouTube algorithm. Also, don't forget to subscribe. And if you want to interact more with me, don't forget to join the Discord and follow me on Twitter. And if you want to support me any further, head over to my Patreon. Just $5 a month gets you 1 week early access to all of my videos. These awesome people have already donated, so I can continue to bring you the content that you love. The links for all of these are in the description below. Anyway, I'm Ronan Charizard, and I'll see you in the next video.